Hello and welcome to our daily sketching routine. It is Thursday, I forgot what day it was, November 28th, 2024, and happy Thanksgiving for those of you in the US. And today's topic will be intermediate level drawing. And yeah, I'd been talking about wanting to do a video about that. So this will be a continuation from yesterday's video, which is about the artistic journey, but specifically my artistic journey, although I'm actually going to talk about it more today. But yeah, before we begin, welcome back if you're returning, welcome if you're new. I sketch and post every day, even on holidays, and I set timers. I've been doing 10-minute timers because these videos have been longer, so I'll set a 10-minute timer right now to stay focused and build a sketching habit. So if you just want to use these videos as a way to motivate and to build a habit for sketching and drawing, then feel free to do that. That's the main purpose and the intention behind my channel. So yeah, this will be a continuation from yesterday's video, which was called My Artistic Journey. So I'll post that as part of the related video. But these topics are very deep, and so they take a long time, which is good, which is what art is, which is why I love it. It's because it's a lifelong journey. And I had mentioned that, so first of all, I'm using this green pen, which is the same Papermate brand. And I like them a lot, these colored ones. That kind of has to do with style, which is also part of the intermediate level. But I forgot what I was about to say. But I gotta get warmed up. So to get warmed up, so yeah, there was a lot of interesting topics that I covered yesterday, and it was a 40-minute long video, and I'm still contemplating it. This is the most organized I've been with these ideas and with my art, honestly. I was going to explain why I'm using this. So I'm going to basically focus on head construction, because I know that, one, that's a challenging thing and it's popular, and it's also one of those things that, well, people want to learn, and also it's kind of easy to see if you draw a head that, like a human head, that is off. So I just that's basically going to be what I'm going to be sketching. However, I won't explain all the basic stuff. I'll be demoing, and I do have a basic drawing and figure drawing playlist that has a lot, actually, of videos explaining it in more detail, more of a tutorial or how-to, if you will. So feel free to check those out. But today I'll talk about what I'm doing, but I'll also kind of talk about my artistic journey, which was the However, I mentioned that sometimes the idea doesn't come until later. So yesterday I was kind of talking about all of this, the journey itself, basically. But then I realized that, okay, I could talk about, since we are talking about like intermediate, like what does that mean? So let's just begin by getting warmed up and sketching. And I'm using a different color because, one, I like to experiment. So I could use a pencil. I mean, I've done that, but I'm just going to use a different color and then go in with maybe black ink or just color it, keep it in color like that. So to begin with, since we talked about construction, and the intermediate level of drawing is not that different than the beginner level, in that the basic elements, which was the video before yesterday, so yesterday kind of served as a prologue to this topic. And obviously I'm not going to be able to talk about all of the intermediate level stuff today. I can talk about it, but I won't be able to demonstrate everything. But the intermediate level still uses basic elements, so shapes. And whatever method you use, you could use more of a cube. You could use more of an ellipse. So these are still simple or basic elements. And let's just do some front views. So I'm not going to write notes everywhere, kind of like this. Sometimes that's good, and then sometimes I don't really want to do that. And I'm going to, as a warm-up for myself and also as a demo, I'm going to just kind of draw, and I'll just kind of keep this going on. I'll use the rest of this page to kind of get warmed up. Make sure the camera's okay. So I'm just going to be kind of deliberate here. Sometimes I'm very sketchy. So if you look at what I'm doing right here, it isn't as sketchy as, let's say, some of the other stuff. Like, that's more sketchy. And it's just an approach. And by being more deliberate, I'm holding the pen a little bit tighter rather than loose. And I'll do some loose ones. So I'm going to put in crosshairs. And to begin talking about the intermediate level of drawing is, first of all, when you're a beginner, you kind of need to learn about the basic shapes or the basic elements, but let's just call it like basic shapes. So this is what you're going to use. Now what I'm doing is what is called construction. So I'm putting down construction lines, and I'm doing that based upon proportion. And I remember, oh, so this kind of goes with my artistic journey, since my mind is kind of wanting to go in that direction. But I'll be demoing kind of intermediate. So if you're wondering, well, what's so intermediate about basic construction that you can find anywhere, and in fact explain better in like Andrew Loomis books or Jack Ham books or John Buscema books. And that's true. I mean, that's my point. There's a million videos about this. There's maybe a million books, I don't know. But there's certainly better explanations. But I think it's good to kind of see a demonstration of things. So for example, what I'm demonstrating is construction, which is not a beginner thing, by the way. So doing this is not actually that intuitive. But the basic shapes are intuitive. And we'll get into all of that. And I'm just going to focus on this technique, first of all. This style, it's also a style. So that's 10 minutes. And I'll start another one. I mean, it takes a while to like get into these topics because I'm deep diving. But yeah, sometimes, so one of the things that was sort of missing, and that was kind of like the gatekeeping back in the day, was demonstrating these things. And that was, but now because of the internet, you can see a demonstration. So I'm just going to kind of keep it at this zoom level for simplicity. So that's really helpful to a certain extent. But what I'm demonstrating and what makes it intermediate is, first of all, construction is intermediate. And I'll kind of talk about my artistic journey here, in that whenever I would call myself a beginner, and again, it doesn't really matter your age. The point is that you're a beginner. Construction was not, I mean, I learned about it because, like I said, there was no YouTube, so I kind of learned about it through magazines and stuff. And then I started to practice it, and it didn't come that naturally. So that's why I call it intermediate, because it takes a certain level of discipline and a certain level of habit in order to do it. And so that's kind of like a step up from being a beginner to like an intermediate. It's sort of making that decision like, okay, I'm going to, in order to have more symmetry, in order to have more structure, in order to make it not even necessarily realistic, because I'll do some that aren't that realistic, but better drawn. That's really what it is. Then that's moving from a beginner to intermediate. As far as why this is intermediate and more than intermediate, maybe even advanced for that matter, which is the next, like I'll eventually talk about advanced concepts, is that I'm able to speak and then just do this from imagination, from memory, from intuition, and automatically, basically. So I think that's a good, it's a good thing to show. It's a good thing to demonstrate, because like I said, I didn't really have this, so I'm just gonna sketch. So yeah, my point is that for me, like, this is kind of the next level to be able to do this, and then make a recording. I'm gonna give this guy a beard. I'll talk a little bit about what I'm doing. But I tend to turn everybody into a potential character. It is interesting, though, that if I do kind of stop talking, it is interesting how that works, like the verbal versus the visual centers of the brain, how that works, the linguistics. And that's natural. I mean, for example, when I'm drawing, I can listen to music, like that's fine. I can listen to talking but like not really specifics. So for example, what I'm talking about right now, like I can listen to while I'm drawing if it's kind of general and if it's listenable. And even if I kind of, or if the person I'm listening to talks about what they're doing, like specifically, if it's listenable, then it's fine. I mean, the audio is listenable. So going back to what I was saying, because that's kind of how my mind is working. So like, if I need to figure something out, kind of like the look of this character, you'll notice that the verbal part of my brain shuts off, and then I start thinking about things visually, such as the look of the character. So that's kind of interesting, actually. And that might just be me, but I think other people are kind of similar. But yeah, once I kind of figure something out visually, then I can start talking again. So that's kind of what I mean about demonstrating this, is to be able to get a good drawing while talking about something else and recording it is definitely intermediate. That's not a beginner kind of thing. But just going back to my artistic journey, so I talked about when I was a beginner. So now that we kind of warmed up with that, I'm gonna just kind of keep drawing more, whatever comes to my mind, and I'll do kind of different styles. So yeah, with that said, and I might be a little bit more maybe loose, because I find that when I'm kind of loose with it, I don't have to think about it as much. When I'm being deliberate, I can't really talk. And I don't always have to use construction lines, but I think that would be helpful for people watching to see construction lines. So anyway, I was saying, like, when I was a beginner, yeah, like this had to be practice. So that's why I'm saying it's intermediate, because I didn't intuitively want to do this. Like, you have to practice construction. So as I'm talking about when I was a beginner, so I'm one of those people that could say, yeah, I've been drawing all my life and stuff, and it's true. I mean, there's people like that. And I didn't think much of it. I mean, that's just kind of what I did. But I will say that since we are talking about the intermediate level, and I talked about how this was basically the plateau level and the craftsmanship level, that maybe whatever talent I have may have come from just the desire to do it when I was younger, but it didn't mean that the skill was there, and maybe in some ways it was there. And yeah, there are prodigies that can copy, but you'll notice that even kids that I see that can copy things that are prodigies, they're still missing intermediate level skills. So that should tell you something. That should tell you what that means. And that actually has a lot to say for stuff like AI images, where maybe the rendering is really good, but really the child that's copying. So that's 10 minutes. I'll start another one. And I know that, are we on the 30th? Let's see. We're heading into 30 minutes. So I might just get as far as these 3 heads here, and then I'll ink it. And I still think that's pretty valuable, by the way, to see this demonstration, because I'm talking and doing this. So I think that's a good demonstration, actually. So yeah, my point is that should kind of tell you, okay, going back to like the child prodigy thing, because I don't think I'm a child prodigy in the sense that I mean, I don't think I'm a prodigy, but I've seen, for example, like kids that can paint whatever, like maybe they can copy. Like what I've noticed is that their technique is pretty good in the way they copy, but there's like tricks to it. But the mechanical ability, the craft of it is there to a certain extent, or maybe like a skill or something like that. But there's something missing in the sense that art isn't just about copying, and that's my point. So, with that said, maybe the next thing I can talk about is, I was going to talk about like talent. So whatever talent I might have maybe just came from the fact that, yeah, maybe I started drawing when I was little, but I mean, a lot of kids drew when they were little, and maybe the talent is just has to do with imagination or something like that. But the point is, and this is why I am emphasizing the intermediate level of art, is that when you reach this level, most of it is skill. And if you have talent but you don't practice, it doesn't really matter. I mean, it doesn't equate or result in skill. You still have to practice. So there's that. There are ways of equalizing stuff, and there are ways that things kind of naturally balance out. Now, if you combine talent with practice and skill, well, yeah, you're going to have a good artist. So kind of moving on here. I'll do this one kind of anime-ish, maybe. I wouldn't say anime-ish, like maybe cartoony is probably what I prefer to call it. Let's kind of move on to the idea of my journey as far as when did I know that I was sort of into intermediate? Well, like I said, once I began to actually care about drawing better and using construction and stuff like that, then I would say that, yeah, like I started moving from beginner to intermediate. And if I started when I was younger, which I did, then that's where the skill is coming from. But you could do that now. And there's things that as a kid, that I didn't, that you're not going to know and you're not going to have access to. And so, for example, a kid doesn't really know discipline. They'll do it because it's fun, but as soon as so that's kind of like the problem with stuff like talent. So maybe talent is just something that maybe a kid just has fun doing something, and so maybe we call that talent or something like that. But yeah, so that would be kind of the beginnings of going into intermediate level. Would be, yeah, when you start kind of doing this kind of thing. But like I said, this doesn't really come that naturally. Like, you have to practice. So I'll talk about this a little bit. So yeah, I'm just kind of coming up with stuff. This is all from imagination. The construction is from memory. So you kind of have to memorize the proportion and stuff like that. And I'll keep making more of these videos, which is good. It's good to have something to talk about and draw. What was I going to say? Oh yeah, so yeah, you have to memorize like the proportions, but notice that this is more of a Loomis method. This is more kind of a basic construction, I think, that you can find in a lot of different books on how to draw. This is kind of my way of doing anime. This is like the cartoony version, which I kind of like. I don't like the kind of the popular anime look. I'm not really a fan. And so yeah, this one wasn't it's not Loomis method, but it did use some construction. But yeah, definitely this should become kind of second nature, and I just wanted to demonstrate how once you can reach a level where it's sort of automatic, then that's good. I mean, it's good to know, like, okay, like that's a skill that I can learn, which you can. So what I would do, just to kind of not leave this undone here, let me zoom in. So yeah, I'll kind of, hopefully it'll turn out okay, like the video quality. I keep these pretty informal. This is not supposed to be a class. This is supposed to be a workshop, if anything. And it's meant to just kind of sketch together. It keeps me encouraged, and hopefully it encourages others. So if you have this much, maybe I can move into the idea of style. And I'll stay on these. So one thing I wanted to point out, so I'm just going to kind of outline this without thinking about it too much. One thing I wanted to point out was that when I started the channel, the main thing was to keep a daily sketching habit. That's like the main thing. And then the other thing is that whenever I was hopefully this is in camera. Yeah, the other thing is that I realize now that I was kind of mixing the beginner stuff with the intermediate stuff, and so that's kind of why I'm doing this. And part of that was also because I'm also on the artistic journey myself, so I also didn't know if I could even do this, if I could even talk about these concepts while drawing. So that was the other thing. And now that I see that, okay, that I can, and that's why I'm talking about the intermediate. Like, so maybe that's what that means. That's what I was thinking. So that's another 10 minutes. I'm gonna start another 10-minute timer and just wrap it up, because that'll be heading into 40 minutes, which is pretty awesome actually. So yeah, you don't have to watch all of this at once. I feel like if it's a turn off, the length of it, of the videos to people, then I can't help that. And also the format of it, I want to upgrade my equipment, but basically it's going to be like this for a while, because I'm only going to upgrade once I get like a good amount of money to do it, like enough money. It's a priority kind of thing. So my thing is, the information is the main thing, the daily habit is the main thing. And yeah, I know I can't please everyone. So the style I'm using here is not really that sketchy, but maybe sketchier than some people, but maybe not as sketchy as what I sometimes do. I'm not always that sketchy with stuff, but sometimes it can help, like in this example, be like looser about it. But remember that sketchy is not just like a style, but it's also like a purpose. So for example, these are sketches. And I can go into more detail about kind of the how-to, but I feel like sometimes the best thing is just to see what I'm doing. Because if you are wanting to learn how to draw this kind of thing, which is basically character design, because this is all from imagination and it's just based upon studies, so go ahead and study faces, obviously. But I like to design characters from imagination. So, and as far as like style, since we're talking about that, so that is actually a style, like to be able to construct a head out of imagination and then draw a character and make it look a certain way is a style. Like that's a drawing from imagination kind of style. Like it'll have that look, which I like. I mean, that's my favorite. Because to me, it's like when you're reading a book. I mean, you want the story, obviously, but it's not just about that. Otherwise, you would just read an outline. But you also want to kind of get in the mind of the author, because that's where you feel that connection of another person and how they think and how they see. So I don't usually do this colored underdrawing thing, but I like it, just like I like I like using pencil too, but it is nice to draw over ink rather than pencil, since it's a different medium. You kind of have to erase. What else? Let me move on to this next one. Another approach could be kind of doing this, but like using this as like the under painting, if you will. And I had already set up the lighting. That's another intermediate level thing, like understanding. And I mean, I still goof up that. Like sometimes I'll forget how I had the lighting, and it just looks kind of weird when the lighting is off. Another story that I could relate is that I mentioned that the intermediate level was kind of a plateau. It's the majority of what you're going to go through in order to develop like your craft. And although when I was younger and basically a beginner, and I started to do this, which kind of moved me into a more intermediate level, because most people aren't going to want to do this. Now, maybe more these days because times have changed and stuff, and maybe this is more of a beginner thing, the construction itself, maybe not doing it while talking and like this easily, like, or it's not even like 100% that easy. But then beyond that, like a few years later or several years later, the next kind of, I would still call it intermediate. I would still consider myself intermediate whenever I started to, like, I got an art job and started doing freelance art and stuff like that. I was still intermediate. And then I kind of ran into my first experience of art block, because the pressure, like I wasn't used to that. Like, because before I didn't really have art blocks, because as a kid you either drew or you didn't. It wasn't most of the time you were playing and doing homework and going to school, and so there was no art block because you just didn't do it if you didn't feel like it. But then, yeah, that's kind of the deal with talent, is that when you're little, people think, oh, well, you're talented, but then later when you actually have to treat it like work, I ran into my first kind of experience with art block where I felt stuck. I couldn't just do it. And so that's kind of a life experience thing. And that's kind of an ongoing thing, actually. And this is kind of another topic and another story, which, I mean, I'll talk about if it occurs to me, if it feels like the right thing to talk about. But one thing is that there's a couple of minutes left. I'm going to leave that one. This one I'm going to be kind of outlining, but to do that you kind of need a pen. I'm going to use something thin. Or maybe I'll use like a gray pen. I don't know. Maybe that'll be good. So what was I saying? I don't remember, but one of the things I wanted to say was how, yeah, that's the thing with being, that's why I have a lot of understanding for intermediate level artists, is because, one, I ended up working at jobs to make a living that were not art related more than art related. So I've been through all of that. Like, I've been through it all. I definitely have a lot of life experience. And I mean, I'm not old, but I've just been through a lot of stuff. And I've always had to fight to do art. That's the one thing. So I've always had to find a way to do it. So I'm using gray. It's kind of fun. I like it. What was I saying? Oh, so part of how I overcame that kind of thing, which is, I haven't 100% overcome it, but it's this idea that since I had worked so hard at jobs that were not art related for basically other people, and I kind of did that with art, like I was working for others, that now I'm not blocked when it comes to that, because yeah, I could see that, well, if I did it for them, why wouldn't I do it for myself? So that's how I kind of overcame that. Again, it's not 100%. It's like a good reminder. But I do have a video about art flow and art block. I'm not going to link to it, but if you are interested. So that's another 10 minutes. It kind of went by really fast. And at this point, I was able to design some characters using different styles. And I wasn't exactly sure how to, like what I was going to draw. I mean, I don't have a script, but I could definitely turn these into OCs. And yeah, different styles using construction, which is intermediate, but then kind of more intermediate, I guess, would be kind of being able to do it so fluently that you can record a video and talk about other stuff while you're doing it and still come up with a good drawing. And I'm only doing that not only, well, the main reason is for my channel, but also, like I said, it's important to be able to demonstrate certain things, because when you see someone else do it, then you think, okay, well, first of all, they're really good at it, or they're better than me. But it also lets you see, because I guess we have mirror neurons, where if you see someone do it, then there's something in your mind that thinks, well, I can do something like that. So I'm not the best artist. I don't think I'm as good as the artists that I look up to. So for example, Mobius or people like that. I don't think that, I'm not gonna, I like the colored look there. But however, like I do have my own style, and that's kind of a different topic. But now that I get this far, I'm gonna work on these characters more. And yeah, I want to thank you for joining me today. It's a holiday, but to me this is fun, and I'm thankful for, since it is Thanksgiving, so I'm always thankful to be able to do my art and to be able to share it with you, and for you to get something valuable from it. So if you like these videos, then thank you for supporting the channel, and until next time, keep on sketching.